And, here I go to this university. I'm 17 years old. And little did I know that this was going to be 5 years of exploring space and density and in a very logical way of problem solving, construction, and in the most modern way. This was a school that was developed by Mies van der Rohe from the Bauhaus in Germany. And he came, when he had to leave Germany in the 30s, he came to Chicago to open this school. So I had no idea who he was. I had no idea about Germany. I had no idea about, minimalism. I had no idea about any of this. But I took it all in, and we had an amazing class there called visual training, where for, I don't know, it was nearly 2 months, we would have a whiteboard, 30 by 40 inch Strathmore board, and we would place a horizontal line and a vertical line. And for months, we would debate those 4 rectangles that were made and the proportions of things. And all of this are still things that I do now. I mean, things get more complicated. You start bringing in how to make a line, how to make a gesture. Those gray areas between chance and intention, and all of these little things play together, and then try to find a resolve in it. So yeah, for decades I've been exploring these ideas in different ways, through oil painting, through drawing. The drawings themselves have led to sound exploration, that led to music composition, which has then led to performance. But it's still this little handful of ideas of how to make a line. What does a line sound like? And those are like really the 2 major things I deal with on a kind of a daily basis. The last great adventure I had was finally deciding to go to grad school, which was, I just graduated last year. It was February of 2019. A dear friend of mine was staying at my house. And I've known Lee Feinstein. She's an amazing painter, curator. And she goes, "Paul, enough already. You've been going for a master's degree for years already. Just apply somewhere and do it. Just do it." So I got online, and the first school that came up was the Vermont College of Fine Arts. I was like, "Whoa, Vermont, never been there. Let's see what this is about." So they just started a master's degree in music composition. And that really, I had a few very conceptual ideas of how I go about composing music. This sounded like the strangest and most challenging adventure to go down. So I applied for that, and with much debate, the college accepted me into their program. So it was tumultuous, to say the least. I showed up, and everybody else in the master's program already has a bachelor's in music. They already are professional musicians. They've already have all of this wealth of information. And I come in as this painting architect with this idea of what time and sound does. And I was completely panic-stricken, which does not happen that often. But this was like the fish out of water. I couldn't even speak the language they're speaking. It's like, this is going nowhere quick. This is disaster. So during that time, the way that the college is set up, you show up on campus twice a year, February and August, for a week. And that's when you present music, You get your new advisor. It's all a week long of lectures and information of people talking at you and very little talking back. You're just getting stuff thrown at you. So I'm getting all of this information in a musical language that I barely comprehend. And I get in touch with one of my nephews, and completely I just text him. It's like, this is not going well. And he texted back. It's like, you got into the program, just be yourself. It's like, okay, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna be myself in this situation, and everything will work itself out. And it kind of did. I mean, there was some really grand and amazing moments while I was there. At the same time, there was always this I was the only conceptual person there. So I really didn't have anybody to throw ideas off of or talk to. It was mostly just me in my own head while I was there. But eventually people were warming up to what I was doing and the experimenting, and that got me involved with performing on stage and performing live, like doing live drawings. It's like the sounds that I like the sound of a pencil on paper. I like the sound of a brush on canvas or on stretched mylar or something. There are sounds I like, and I can incorporate that because that's who I am. So I kind of got into this interesting situation and came out of it in fairly good shape at the end of it. There's always that faction that's like, can you really read sheet music? It's like, I studied the piano when I was a kid, like 8 years old to when I graduated high school. So it was a long time ago since I looked at sheet music. It's like, yeah, I can read it. But over the course of that time, it's like, I don't want to read it. I don't want to write that way. I don't want to dictate to musicians what I want them to do. Much like the way I paint, where there's a lot of chance of spilling things and scraping things. It's like, what if I just set up a series of situations, musical situations, and then we'll figure it out as we play it, or as you play it, or if I join you and play it. That throws the whole mix into a whole other dimension. It's taken me a long time to digest that. I graduated over a year ago, and I'm finally getting the thoughts together about this, how to defend the definition of being a composer who's not Mozart, who's not Stravinsky, who's not Paul McCartney, who's not any of these people, but would rather look at a splatter of paint on a piece of paper and figure out what that would sound like for anybody. So I'm in the midst of wrapping up a composition piece. It's called Action Figures. And maybe 6 years ago, I did this series of large paintings on mylar, very gestural, very blacking, casing, very loose and rather violent. And I'm taking these images, these paintings, and very elegantly just putting a line through them and saying that's the middle note of any instrument. These are the concept behind this is that anybody, whether they're 5 years old or 500 years old, who knows how to play an instrument can play this, because it's interpreting an image. It's finding value, finding your own value, finding your path, finding what excites you with minimal information to look at this painting and describe it and play it your way. So I've been playing around with this for about a year, and so there's a lot of refinement going back and forth between this. How much information to give, which is very much like a painting. How much information do you want to give for something to be representational or abstract? And what's that gray area? What's that balance between saying too much and saying too little? It doesn't shrink or expand with heat or anything. It's really an interesting material, and you can stretch it. I've stretched it to paint on, and I've stretched it on stretcher bars and used that as a musical instrument, using dry brushes and ink droplets, and I mean, with enough microphones, there's a lot of interesting things you can do that suddenly this media goes beyond what you thought it was going to be. It's not just a painting. I can wad this up and record that, and that recording can become the basis for something else. And then we still have this image that can be figured out to be something else. It's just really fascinating.
How is the quarantine affecting your time now, and what you're working on in your studio at home, since you're locked out of your studio?
So I've been investigating other aspects of what that master's experience in Vermont was, and so everything's on my computer. I've been collecting sounds and things for years, and I'm slowly making an album right now of using all of this found sound, made sound from past performances, sound I can manipulate on my computer into a kind of isolation sound. I guess I could say it's music, because I am using some instruments that I've recorded. But that's really it. It's more of a solo thing. It's like I'm in this room with not a lot of space to work, but I have this machine. And even the visual work has really gone into exploring photographs. Because I don't...
the pieces that I've been seeing on your Instagram profile, you've been dealing with a lot of spatial line elements and different textures, and you really, there's a real sense of play occurring right now, even with the limitations of the quarantine.
It's true. Well, there's, that's the beauty of being artists, is that we have a curiosity. And I'm not one to dive into a project knowing how it's going to end up. So let's just start something. And, trust your judgment, trust your eyesight, trust what you're listening to, and try to find a new conclusion. Finding the new conclusion is always the adventure. That's the adventure with making a painting. It's like, what else? How can I surprise myself? How can I do something that's not what I've done before, that kind of propels me in a different direction? Or propels an idea into a higher level, that it's, becomes something I may not be able to replicate again. It's something that's got to give, or poses a different question. So yeah, I've always been a photographer. I always have a camera. I always take pictures, and I have thousands of pictures, but they never meant anything as a medium to use. It's just recording, taking photos of finished paintings, taking photos of while you're traveling, taking photos of whatever. But now I've got thousands of these things, and they're all on this computer, and I need to do something here. I'm stuck in this house for the next 4 weeks. Let's see, what can I do with this? I call them meditations. I do a virtual digital piece every morning, because for something like that, for me, I need numbers. I need a lot of them to see if something good happened. So now that I've got hundreds of these digital images that I say are finished, it's like, well, what were the good things out of it? And now what can this be? Should these stay in the computer? Should I print them out? Are these just going to be ideas for maybe large scale paintings? It's like, let's take the good ones and see what that means later on down the line. Everything gets kind of reused and rethought over years. For the people here that know me, nothing ever finishes.
Can you talk about collaboration? Because you studied architecture, which is a very collaborative process, and then now you're in a studio, which could be a very individual process, but your impulse is to collaborate, and it's kind of like there's almost this element of like jazz music to the way that you're describing how this comes together. And I'm curious about collaboration and how that supports your process, especially in a time of quarantine when collaboration is a little bit more difficult.
Well, collaboration is problematic at best. What I'm finding, though, is much like architecture, you need a group of people. That is an organization. Music is very much the same way. You need people to play it. And there's naturally dialogue at that point. What I'm finding with music and a lot of even visual things, the collaboration comes into those who want to take the music and do something visual with it. Like start looking at it in video, which I am beyond happy when someone wants to do that. It's like, you want to take this 10-minute piece of music and figure out what it looks like? That's great, because it's too much for me to do that. I don't want to do that. One facet is enough. Let someone else take over the other facet. I like that a lot. But yeah, you need people to do that. Luckily, through all of that, we can do digitally easily. It's like a few years ago, a photographer I know in Paducah, Kentucky, Glenn Hall. I had a lot of music that I had recorded in a studio, all via computer. And I just gave it to him. It's like, here, this is what it sounds like. You show me what it looks like. And he did this extraordinary little 3.5-minute movie, which ended up being shown in a kind of a satellite festival during the Venice Biennale. In this 16th century palazzo building, our movie, is being shown there. It's like those are the moments you really relish, and you want to work with really great people, curious people, clever people, experimental people. That's what you want to do. See what happens.
Yeah, I have actually a question.
Sure.
I really love the idea actually of just like your practice, and it kind of reminds me of like soloists, but with like sound, and I thought that was so interesting. And I was kind of just curious if you could like talk a bit more of like okay, so you talk about performance. But what happens like in an ideal situation where maybe you get a museum space or a gallery space? How do you feel these images will be presented, and how do you feel about how the sound will be presented in those spaces? I'm kind of curious to see like what your ideal situation would be.
There's numerous ideal situations. Performance goes hand in hand with my love and history with architecture, because a performance is based on what the space is about. So a lot of my performances they define the space that I'm in itself. So a lot of them involve a sheet of paper or a roll of mylar that goes across the entire space of the gallery or the building. And there's microphones set up. Typically, I have a microphone on me that's wireless, that's attached to a pencil or a piece of graphite. And I just start drawing on the floor. And just start drawing. And I go the entire length of the building, for however long that takes. and all of that sound is recorded. It can be manipulated by somebody else through a computer. My last exhibition, I had some live musicians and someone on the computer. So as I'm making these sounds, the piece lasted, it was like 2.5 hours. They were listening to the sounds I'm making. I'm listening to the music they're playing. And we defined the entire length of this gallery with this drawing. So that's typically, I have a few projects up my sleeve that I would really like to explore. I did the action figures for an exhibition in Phoenix last summer. And I had the paintings on the wall, and I had paper. No, I had Mylar. I had Mylar on the floor, and a trumpet player. And it took me an hour to get from one end of the gallery to the other. And he was just looking at the drawings and playing what he felt he wanted to play. And keeping an eye on me, because I told him, it's like, you'll know when I'm done, and that's when you stop. And the drawings were beautiful. And we ended up on opening night, we did that performance. When it was done, we left open space on the walls, and we just pulled the drawings up off the floor and just tacked them up. It was just really elegant and eloquent. And, a handful of people happened to be there because it was in August, and it was literally like 112 degrees outside. So nobody was going out to the galleries that day. Yeah, I'm looking forward. What I'd like to do in Mexico City is I'd like to take a lot of just random field recordings, like take all of these random street sounds and coordinate that into something in this abandoned building with some really interesting musicians. And maybe there's a spoken word. Maybe I'm doing something on the floor as the control. I'm finding with the more performances I do that the sound of me on the floor is like a control. It's like a soothing mechanism. It's like this white noise that allows for other silences and other things to happen without it being dead space. Just, there's no awkward moments because there's always my hand, there's always me as a visual, there's always me doing something that allows for other space to open up within the music, within the performance, within the space. So that's something I would really like to experiment with. It's just like 20 minutes of street sounds and that only the musicians can hear. It's like, how do I reproduce this bus braking and people chattering and the sound of people walking down? It's so not, it shouldn't happen, but musicians are so clever. They'll find a way to make it work. So,
I think it'd be interesting too, because if you're using local musicians, then they already have experience with those sounds. So it would be interesting to have like a blend of musicians who are new to the sounds as well, or like coming from different places, so that
sure.
There's like a uniqueness to it as well, because there are definitely a lot of repeating audio, the music of the city that occurs constantly here. So.
And I've had this idea for a long time also, simultaneously, having to have a microphone like on the street level. But I also like to then have a camera that's like at street level on a little tripod. That's just like taking a picture every 2 minutes, just random things. And from a visual, that can become a whole other piece of music. Because the way I work with visuals is very mathematic. It's like the horizontal line is time, vertical axis is pitch. So you can graphically determine how long a note can be and what that note is depending on the instrument you're choosing. So it's like that could be a whole other sidebar thing of these photographs that are then identified as a sound piece, that then there is a microphone there that is actually recording the sound. And we could do just something with street sound of these images or live music with earbud. There's so many more things that could happen.